so much again, Deepa, for taking out the time to meet with me today. Really excited to kick off the Chief Future Officer series with you. To give you a bit of context again, the reason why we decided to start off this series is to have a platform where we can bring together top finance leaders in the Middle East to discuss and share insights on the future of finance in the region. And that's exactly what we'll do here today. Just want to have a regular chat with you, get to know you, and get your perspective on different topics in finance.
Perfect.
Shall we begin?
Yes.
Okay, so Deepa, your career has spanned some pretty remarkable roles and your experience speaks for itself. But I want to kick things off with a more personal question. What brought you to Dubai in the first place, and how did you navigate your career from there to being a senior partner at Gratia Advisory today?
So I moved to Dubai in 2000, 25 years before, and I got married, so I moved to Dubai and started off my career as a financial analyst. And then I've just been growing exponentially from one role to another role till where I reached Gratia as the senior partner for finance and operations. Over these years, I've done multiple industries. So I started off in Dubai in a banking environment, moved to education, media, and but pretty much majority of my career has been in real estate because real estate was the boom in 2007 onwards. So I've been in real estate, moved into manufacturing, then now with a consulting company since 2022.
Okay, so you mentioned, and I saw on your LinkedIn as well, how you've worked on such varied sectors from retail and F&B at Orjan Group to project finance at Dubai Investments and District 2020. How do you adapt your financial strategies when you're moving between different industries?
Say, if I'm going to give you a home making style, cooking styles are almost the same, right? If you take a basic curry, you have tomato, you have onions, you have ginger garlic. I'm talking about Indian cooking, right? So it's pretty much the same. The fundamentals are the same. It's only the way you report it or the way you account for it would be different. But overall, financial strategies in terms of accounting does not change much. The planning does not change much. It's only the way it is prepared, the way it is presented changes from different industry to industry. So it was not too difficult for me to adapt. But wherever I joined, I ensured I understood the business completely before I stepped into whether it was planning and analysis or presentation or whatever it is. I kind of understood what the industry needs, and that's when I start working on how to go about doing things. So fundamentals always don't change. It's the way you prepare and present it that changes from industry to industry.
Okay, great. You have been responsible for building entire finance functions from the ground up, especially at Expo City Dubai. What were some of the most unexpected challenges you faced when setting up the finance systems for a project like District 2020, and how did you overcome them?
So for me, District 2020 was my first role as head of finance. Till then, my career has been focused on financial planning and analysis. I finished as the head of planning and analysis at Orjan, and then I got the opportunity to work as head of finance for District 2020, which was the legacy project of Expo City, Dubai. So there is the advantage of setting up a financial function in a new organization is because, and if you're leading it, you know exactly what you want as long as your project lead is there to guide you or support you in what you want. There is no issues that you face. But for a company like District 2020, which was to become a legal entity after Expo 2020, we still had to go to the finance of Expo 2020 to ensure that what we want is being approved. One of the biggest challenges I faced was Expo 2020 was on SAP, right? And for District 2020, we felt that taking on SAP would be a very expensive affair, right? So we wanted to look at some other ERP which was more applicable for the project that we were going to lead in. That is where we had the biggest challenge, because all the others was my baby and I have delivered it. So there was no questioning or any challenges that came about. It's only in the ERP sector we had a problem, because there was an existing SAP. They wanted us to take over SAP and continue in the same system.
Mm-hmm.
Needed a lot of convincing for us to explain to the senior management as to why District 2020 does not need SAP, because from an application, we didn't need such a big applications, and from an purely from a cost perspective as well. So when we showed them the price differences between both and the cost benefit analysis of having the newer ERP than SAP, I think it was more easier for me to convince them that over a period of time, SAP will be made redundant in Expo 2020, and we will be allowed to take over the ERP that we would want to go with.
Okay, speaking about ERPs, Deepa, how would you say that these integrations have, transformed the finance function in your organizations? Or how would you say that that these have been the right tools for your teams?
See, I think that purely comes from experience as well, right? So over the years, like from the banking sector to the real estate to manufacturing, you know the different products that you have worked on. And as you move up in your ladder, you know you have the flexibility and the freedom to make decisions. And because you have such a vast experience, it's easier for you to know what is the scale of your business, what is the requirement, what is the need for an extensive ERP or a smaller ERP. Like, say, for example, in Gratia, when we first started Gratia Consultancy in 2022, it was a startup, right? And I wouldn't recommend even a mid-tier ERP for this, because your transaction levels are low, your collections and payables are going to be low. It's a startup. So basically, you need to understand what the requirement of the organization is. And then, because of the experience that you have over the years, you kind of know, you have a gut guess of what is the correct ERP that would be required for your organization, on the basis of which we recommend. Now, the other factor to this is that you also know what is your long term growth for the or plan for the organization as well, right? So for District 2020, we knew we needed CRM, we needed the basic accounting package, we needed the HR package. So anything that was not a level of the tier one ERPs, the tier two ERPs was more than enough for us to manage the requirements of the company. So that is what I generally keep that in mind, of what the requirements of the organization is, and then work on looking at what is required. That doesn't mean that I do away with all the tier one. Of course, if we have the budget and we have the flexibility to do it, definitely yes. But for me, the priority is to see what the company requires and then look at it from that perspective.
Got it. One question, while you were talking about this came to my mind about planning. And Deepa, I think you got stuck for a second there. Okay, it's good now.
Yeah.
Okay, so one question that came to my mind when you were talking about, ERPs and how you have to have certain sort of experience and you have to plan for it is long-term planning. So I've seen how long-term planning must be a huge part of what you've done, especially with your work on the 30-year business plan for District 2020, which in itself sounds so big. So how do you approach creating financial models for something so long-term in a world that's constantly changing? What's your strategy for staying flexible in that process?
Okay, so again, District 2020 was the first place where I've done a 30-year business plan. Till then, we've done 5 years and 10 years, which is what is regularly done in any
Yeah.
big organization. For District 2020 was slightly different because we were taking over from Expo, so we knew what was the spend that was happening in the site. And we also had to present to Department of Finance what our long-term business plan is going to be. We work on a long-term business plan. Obviously, we need the key stakeholders to be roped into the discussion, which is the project head. Obviously, we have the head of sales and development. We will have the head of marketing. We'll have the head of architecture because it's construction related. So they will come and then tell us. So we have a master plan that first gets designed, right? Of what you want the site to be or what you want the development to be, on the basis of which then we start planning. Now, I can always say, yes, a 10-year business plan would be more accurate than a 30-year business plan.
Yeah.
But the reason why we had to do a 30-year business plan was to show the Department of Finance that eventually this project will recover all the money that was invested in the Expo 2020 during the Expo 2020 and start making money for the government as well after the initial 4 or 5 years were completed. Now, again, we need any modeling has to be robust. So you can't say, okay, this was my 30-year business plan, go ahead and deliver it. Yes, that's the ultimate goal. But like you said, because we are in a world which is so dynamically changing, we need, I think, during the 1 year that we worked on the 30-year business plan, I think we had like 10 versions, right? Because every time we were presenting it, there will be something or the other that would change. So we have to go. So even the models that were done was such a way that it was so flexible that the moment you put in the key inputs, everything else
Thing
just flows
changes. Yeah.
into changes. And so you can't be rigid saying that this is my 30-year business plan, we just go ahead with it. We have to be able to adapt and be agile to what is happening around you and be able to adapt to what is best for your organization.
Okay, great. Talking about what's best for your organization. There's a lot of buzz around AI and technology transforming finance, and we've also seen a lot of companies adapting to newer technologies. From your experience leading finance functions across various organizations, how do you see these technologies like AI impacting the way finance teams operate today?
See, AI will definitely impact in terms of making things easier for you. Like I always said, I did do a podcast about a couple of years, I think in 2019 or 2020, where I had said, yes, AI will be the ultimate solution for all finance functions. But at the end of the day, they can only do what you instruct them to do,
Yeah.
right? So you still need someone to instruct it. More than instruct it, it'll give you the data that is required. Now, the good thing about being in finance is that, yes, automation is easy, but interpreting the data is more important. So if my managing director is asking me for how much is spent on this month, I have all the invoices that will show me this is what it is. But for him to get out of the raw data and understand what the spend means for him, he will still need someone like me to interpret it. So I always said that robotics will come into place. It will not do away with the finance industry. It will not take away the finance from the finance industry. You still need the human touch to it to add that extra interpretation that will be required by the senior leadership. From a data processing point of view, you will be having access to a lot of data. You'll have access to a lot of information because of the implementation of AI and robotics in finance. So here, when say for a simple example, like a benchmarking that we do for any of the consultancies that we look at. Earlier, because it was more manual, we might just stick to 2 or 3 sectors and we do the benchmarking based on that and give our feedback. Now, because AI is coming into place very actively, you might have like 300 data points that you can reflect and check and make decisions. So I think it more than anything, we can make more well informed decisions because of the implementation of AI into finance and accounting.
Got it. But do you think, Deepa, there are certain roles that might become redundant because of AI?
100%. Anything that is manual, like say, for example, 5, 6 years back, or I think when I was looking at the finance functions for District 2020, one of the things that we said we might not require is accounts payables and accounts receivables because you have software packages that can actually scan your invoices, and even do the debit and credit based on the scanned invoice. So the system itself will be able to say, okay, this is a payable, so this has to go this way. This is the general ledger that it needs to go to. But I wouldn't, because I'm not 100% confident about any system, I will still have 1 or 2 people to make sure that the accuracy of these data points is correct. Because, like I always say, accounts is garbage in, garbage out. If you're not doing the things, entering into the things properly into the system, what you get out will also be
Garbage.
if I it would it become 100% redundant, may not be, but definitely the demand for these roles would be very, very significantly low compared to an analysis analyst or a, the CFOs and those level of people who, because who they are the ones who interpret the data and give me help the management in making well informed decisions.
So where there would be like 8 people needed, you could do with two, right?
Probably, probably,
Okay.
yes.
Makes sense. Okay, so coming to the next question, with Dubai being a hub for innovation, particularly in fintech and digital solutions, how do you see the finance function evolving in the Middle East? Where do you think the region is heading in terms of digital transformation and finance?
I think Dubai has already adopted it big time in every sector of their working. With the crypto coming into place, there are places where cryptocurrency is accepted now. Though I am in denial of cryptos and the thing, I hope and pray that, like I always say that initially we had the barter system, right? When I go up to probably 2000, 5000 BC times, you were given, you give product, and then they came into the thing of currencies. Now I'm sure the people who had to move from a barter system to currency
Cryptocurrencies.
have gone through exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah.
I have read about blockchain. I have read about how the fintech works. I've done a course on it. But if you ask me to talk about that to anyone, I may not be able to do justice. I can explain it to them, but I think I'm more in denial that I hope and pray it doesn't happen while I'm alive. I just let me just get out of it. That's where I feel like sometimes I become a little old school. But I eventually that is going to be the future. We have to come to a stage where we have to accept that the physical currency is slowly going to wean out and you're going to be replaced with cryptocurrency. And Dubai is much ahead in the digital transformation phase. And because they always set the stage for others to just follow, it makes easier for people to follow what the Dubai standards are. I have had companies who contact us saying for any, like, one of the projects that we're working in another country. The reason they told us that they want us to be involved is because they want their tourism sector to flourish exactly like how Dubai standards are.
Yeah.
Dubai has become, like you said, Dubai is the hub for a lot of new things that happens, and the world sees how we deliver each and every product so successfully. It becomes easier for them to just follow.
Yeah.
So that definitely it is what the future is going to be. I guess like when this new year started, they said the children born from 2025 are going to be called the beta children, right? Gen Beta. I hope it comes only after the Gen Beta grows up, and by then I would have gone.
Your kids would be done by then.
Yeah, so
Good.
yeah, so that is the future. We just have to accept it. Yeah.
Okay, great. There's one question I want to ask about your leadership style. So, from your time at Ojan to now with Gratia Advisory, you've had the opportunity to lead and mentor teams. How would you describe your leadership style, and what's been your approach to building high performance finance teams?
So basically, when I first started off, I've got the leadership instincts in me from the time I was young. Like I've led, I was part of the students' union in my college. I was the games captain of my school. So I've had that with me. But once I started working, the biggest shift came is when I realized that as a leader, you don't do things, you get people to do it. So you need to find the balance where you are willing to let go of uh, what you are doing to the team that has been assigned to you and trust that they are doing the best that they can. Now, obviously, you will always have this thing, they may not be as good as you, but that is where, like you said, the mentoring comes in. So sometimes where things are not done the way you
You.
want it
Yeah.
kind of lead them or make them understand. See, one thing I've been very, very lucky is I've had excellent bosses all through my career. They gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And if there was a certain way of doing things, they always explained to me why things were done a certain way, right? And that is something that I have learned from my mentors. And that is what I ensured. Like For me, one of the biggest lessons I've learned while I was growing in my career is that you don't need to micromanage people to get the efficiency out of them. The more you micromanage them, the less productive they
They'll be.
become. Now, I am a person, if you give me the freedom to work, I will deliver the whatever needs to be delivered very quickly. But if you're going to keep micromanaging me, I start rebelling,
Yeah.
right? When you see that, when you have a team, you kind of see the same perspective. Now, if I'm going to micromanage them, obviously they are going to rebel because I would have been a rebel. So my thing was to give them the freedom to work. If they had obviously they might have better ideas than the way I work. And if it is something that is adaptable for the organization, I would ask them to go ahead and do it. But if it is something that is not applicable for our organization, then I would try and explain to them why there are certain things done the way they are. And because of which I've always had teams that really liked me. And like, I'm not saying this because it's me, but they love the way I deal with them. I speak to them. We don't have a sense of manager subordinate. It's more friends. And I think being a woman helps because you have that empathy factor,
Empathy. Yeah.
kind of see anything that they're going through. You are able to pick it up and you're able to deliver. And that is one of my biggest success factors when I've had teams working with me.
You know, everything that you said, it resonates so much because ever since I've become a manager, I struggle so much in delegating because I feel like I can do it. And you know,
Yes.
that perfectionism, it really gets to you.
It's also, no, it's not just about perfectionism, but it's more about letting go of doing something that is so, you're so used to doing it, right? I remember once my husband told me, you need to come out of this, I am a doer to I am a reviewer, right?
Okay.
So because we're so into doing things the way, and for me, it's like, because I like to automate things. So, every time I'm not going to spend so much time, I wanted my team also to
Do
then. And
that, yeah.
sometimes I said, like what you said, sometimes I sit and think, instead of sitting and explaining everything to him, it's easier for me to do it
Do it.
myself. It's time saving. But then it started working on my mind that if I don't do it, they are not learning, and the knowledge just stays with me. So what is the point of gaining so many years of experience if I'm
Experience.
not able to transfer that to other people? So it was a matter of letting go of doing things, and it took a little while, but now I'm in a better position. Maybe because I've had like almost what 8-9 years of leadership experience in the corporate, so it just becomes easier now.
How long do you think it took you to finally be able to do it?
So I think it took me. It's there are still times. I won't say I'm simply out of it. There are still times where I feel like if someone's not doing something which I want them to do it the way I want it, I'm like, it's okay. Just let me just do it myself.
Yeah.
I still go through that phase. I don't think I'm 100% out of it, but then I keep reminding myself that
You have
I
to.
don't do it. Yes, yes.
Yes, you
So
have
I
to.
don't think you ever get out of that completely. So
Okay, so coming to our last question, Deepa, how do you see the role of finance evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And what would you say is the most important skill for future finance leaders to have?
I think for future finance leaders, I think interpreting the data accurately and helping the senior leadership making well informed decision would be always key, because at leadership roles in finance, the stakeholders are looking up to you to give them the right information to help them make decisions, right? So finance, like I always say, finance is the blood of any organization. So
Yeah.
there's never going to be a era where finance won't be required in the organization. But then finance then moves from just number crunchers to more leading strategy and helping the organization scale heights because of the knowledge that they have. Right. So we do, like, generally, like yesterday, a day before yesterday, I was in a forum and they said they've never seen finance people smile. So I think that I want that to change. I want that perspective to change. That finance is just sitting and typing in numbers. That is gone. It's beyond that now. We have grown a lot from where we started, and I think the future of finance is to help the stakeholders of the organization make very, very well informed decisions. So there is a lot of stress we carry. I don't know about the other organizations. I feel like I've spoken to a few of the CFOs and they all tell me, because I've got finance and operations under me right now, a lot of stress that we carry because you want the organization to scale and scale in the right direction, make the right decisions. And that is where I feel that, our inputs always values a lot when stakeholders have to make decisions. So to conclude, I think finance will always continue to be the blood of the organization, and any stakeholder of any organization, whichever level they are, whether it's the board, whether it's the chairman, whether it's the CEO, they all depend on finance to help them make well-informed decisions. So that's what I wanted to say.
You said it very rightfully. I started my career in accounting and finance, and second year I was like, man, I can't be sitting in front of a computer doing this. And now I'm in marketing, but I work with finance people so often, and I see that in fact, it has changed. Like that wave of change has come where people in finance are speaking up, they're networking, they're not just sitting in front of a computer. So you're right.
Yes.
It used to be strange for people in finance to smile even, but thanks to people like you.
Someone day before yesterday told me this, that I was talking to someone and I was laughing about something, and then I got introduced to this guy, and when he knew I was heading finance for Gratia Advisory, he said, "Oh my God, I've never seen finance leaders laughing." And I'm like, Vinny, we are working towards changing that perception of people. And like you said, yes, it has changed a lot from number crunchers to data interpreters now. It's going to
Hopefully,
continue.
it will continue.
It will
Yes.
continue. For sure, it will continue. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deepa, for taking out the time and speaking with me today. It was lovely to have you here, and I'm sure our community will benefit a lot from everything that you've shared today. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you again, Habiba, for having me. It was a pleasure. It was being part of this community. I hope whatever I've shared helps the fellow people around the community and take insights from this to better their organization as well. Thank you so much.